Let's go to the phone lines now and check in with Bill Johnson. Bill, how are you doing?
Doing just fine, Dave. Good morning to you.
Good morning. So it could be a little wet this weekend. I believe the game is in Salem this weekend, isn't it?
We're down at McCall Stadium. We play there every other year, and ironically, when we played down there 2 years ago, unfortunately won 20-10, it also rained a bucket. So we're just kind of expecting maybe about the same thing all over again this year, but that's what the weatherman has been saying all week long, rain on Saturday.
So 84-7. Let's backtrack a little bit here and talk about take the game with Lewis and Clark Family Weekend. I was running the board here at the game at KLYC, and every time I turned around, it seemed like Linfield was making a touchdown.
It was pretty amazing, Dave, really, to run up that many points and to try not to, especially in the second half when the Cats had jumped off to a 70-0 halftime lead. Head coach Joseph Smith took the team in the locker room at halftime. He said, all right, one thing. Number one, all of you are going to get a chance to play, and that means that over 100 Linfield football players played in that game Saturday. And secondly, he said, we are not going to throw the ball one time. We are going to run and keep the clock running. But they were even able to run well, scoring on some touchdowns. They ran back a 99-yard pass. Skylar Elgarico, a rookie from California, ran it back 99 yards. The thing is, coaches never want to embarrass the other coach by running up the score, Dave, but at the same time, as we mentioned on the air, when the young kids get a chance to play, who don't usually want to play, they're not just going to stand around and let the opponent run roughshod. They're going to play as well as they can because they want more playing time, and that's just exactly what the young kids did Saturday afternoon. They played their hearts out, and even they were able to dominate Lewis and Clark when they were getting down to the third and fourth team and even the fifth team players at Linfield.
So is it a situation of Linfield was just was Lewis and Clark having an off day, or is it just that Linfield is that good?
No, Linfield is that good, and Lewis and Clark is, quite frankly, not a very good football program. They've had losing seasons years after years after years. 2 years ago, they did have a 7-2 record, and they ended up in the championship game for the Northwest Conference, and Linfield knocked them off. But last year, they went back to their losing ways, and this year, after losing last weekend, they are now but 1-6. So they're just not playing good football, not playing smart football, and quite frankly, they just don't have the talent to match, say, the Pacific Lutheran Universities, the Willamettes, and the Linfields of the Northwest Conference. They just don't have that talent level.
84 points, is that a record?
It is a school record for one game. It is. The previous record, we were talking about that after the broadcast was over, Dave. The previous record for Linfield was 83 points. So they did surpass it by one. The 99-yard reception turn was not a record. A youngster for Linfield 8 years ago returned a pass from the end zone for a 100-yard interception return for Linfield. So that fell a little bit short, but the 84 points, sure enough, that's a school record for the Linfield Wildcats.
Let's look ahead to this week, Willamette and Salem. What are we expecting?
Is a little bit angry, I think it'd be safe to say, after being upset by Pacific Lutheran University, especially when the game was played in Salem, where Willamette is an extremely strong team playing at home, and they ended up falling behind at halftime 28-10 to the Lutes from Parkland, Washington, and they ended up losing the game 35-24. So they are now one game behind Linfield in the conference standings, as are Pacific Lutheran University, and Willamette simply knows that if they have any chance of winning the conference championship or even getting an at-large berth to the Division III national playoffs, they simply have to win this weekend. There's no doubt about it. And if Linfield wins, it would pretty much be a clear road to the conference title, although they still have Pacific University in the final game of the year, and Pacific is having a tremendous year this year. Linfield would have 2 games left after Willamette, and I think you could pretty much mail in a win over Puget Sound at home. The Loggers are winless in conference play this year, and they're really not testing anybody's ability. But Pacific University, only in its third year of the resurgence of football, is playing very, very well, and Linfield has to play Pacific in Forest Grove, so it'll be a road game, and you just never know what will happen. But I know right now the Cats are only thinking about Willamette in Salem. This has always been a great rivalry, Dave, between these two schools because they're so close to one another. And I'm sure there'll be a great crowd. It'll certainly be a hostile crowd for Linfield. But so far on the road this year, hostile crowds have not really bothered the Wildcats at all. They just play some very good football, whether they're playing at home, whether they're playing on the road or out in the parking lot.
So we've got 3 more games counting this weekend for the regular season for Linfield. Is there postseason play? Is there a bowl game? How does that work?
Well, they do have national playoffs in the Division III ranks. And if the Linfield Wildcats, number one, if they win the Northwest Conference, Dave, they receive an automatic invite to the very first round of the Division III national playoffs. Once you reach the playoffs, it's win and you get to keep playing. If you lose, you go home. So there's no computer ranking or voting for who the best team is in the country. You play it out on the field. Now, the maximum number of playoff games that Linfield could play, let's say they go all the way to the national title, would be a grand total of 5 additional football games. They would play 4 playoff games to qualify for the national championship game, which is played each year in Salem, Roanoke, Virginia. It's called the Alonzo Stag Bowl, and that's where the Cats played 9 years ago in 2004, and they defeated Mary Hardin Baylor, and they finished up the year with a perfect record of 13-0, and they won the national championship. Last year, they lasted to the 3rd round of the playoffs. They had all 3 games at home, but they lost that 3rd game in overtime, and so they automatically dropped out of the playoff picture. So their goal this year is to go to Virginia and win it all, and that's what everybody is thinking, the coaches and the student athletes.
Well, they've got a good start on it. What are their chances realistically? They've got some pretty sizable wins in their column. You know, some shutouts. When you have scores of 71, 52, 51, 84 points in a season, definitely, as they call it, say, Mo is in your side. Momentum is on your side.
Well, it truly is, and the outstanding part of their team this year, they do have a very good offense. There's no doubt about that. When you average more than 50 points a game and they're averaging 55 a game, it's pretty outstanding. But it is defense that wins football games, not necessarily the offense. And their offense is only allowing opponents to score 9 points a game, Dave. And rushing-wise, they are the second-best team in the entire country in defending the running game. They are only allowing their opponents this year to rush for a measly 58 yards a game. So the defense is extremely strong. The offense the past couple of weeks has played very, very well. It kind of stuttered at the start of the year, missed a lot of opportunities to score even more points, but the defense from game number 1 through game number 6 has been extremely strong. It's a senior-laden defense. They're going to lose a lot of tremendous student athletes next year to graduation. But right now, this year, if you talk to head coach Joseph Smith, he just can't find anything wrong with the defense. He just absolutely loves the way they are playing, the down linemen, the linebackers, the safeties, the cornerbacks. He is just happy with the way everybody is playing, and they're playing at such a high level right now. There's no reason to think they wouldn't continue to play that way throughout the rest of the year. So it's, you put your best players forward and you play as good as you can, and you just hope that the Cats can go all the way. It would be really sweet to win a second national championship for the West Coast and for Linfield College.
All righty. So what do we watch for this game in Salem playing Willamette? What are the strengths of both teams? What should we look for?
I think what we're looking for in this game, Dave, on Saturday, and that's a really good question. there's no doubt that Linfield can score points. There's no doubt that Willamette can score points. The Bearcats don't have any problems at all scoring points. They average 45 points a game. The problem with Willamette so far this year is they have given up an awful lot of points. The average score against them per game is 4 touchdowns per outing, or 28 points. So while they give up 28 points a game, Linfield only gives up 9 points a game. So I think the difference will be defense in this game and how they can stop each other. I think that Linfield probably would be favored in this ball game, even though it's on the road, simply because their defense is much tougher than Willamette. And Willamette certainly had troubles last week against Pacific Lutheran in losing 35-24. Their quarterback, Josh Dean, was intercepted 5 times in that game, and PLU scored 35 points on the road against Willamette. When Linfield played PLU, they won the game 29-0, and they shut the Lutes out. So I think defense will be the difference. It'll be the key in this ball game, Dave.
All righty. Are we looking forward? Are we going to have a shutout, or are we going to have a contest?
You know, the Wildcats always play for the shutout. We thought they were going to get one against Lewis and Clark, but the Pioneers were able to score against our 3rd and 4th team players. I kind of doubt if it would be a shutout because Willamette does score very frequently. They have a high-octane, no-huddle offense. They throw the ball very, very well. They don't run the ball that well, but they do throw the ball that well. And I wouldn't be surprised if they did score in the ball game. But even if I stood away from the entire picture and I just looked at the statistics, I would certainly take Linfield to win this game. I'm not very good at predicting scores. I never have been. But I would certainly think that Linfield is certainly the favorite team, especially after last weekend with Whitworth losing a game that, or with Willamette losing a game that, quite frankly, they really had to win that game. And it's now kind of interesting that Willamette and Whitworth are both tied for 2nd place, along with Pacific University, but right in front of the entire race and still undefeated on the year and undefeated in conference play, you find the Linfield Wildcats. So I think that Willamette will score. I just think Linfield will score more.
How is Linfield's defense against the pass?
You know, against the pass this year, they really are doing a very nice job. They give up 173 yards a game, which, quite frankly, Dave, I would say a bench water mark. You know, say for an average football team would maybe be 200 or 225 yards or something like that. The opponents are only throwing the ball for 173 yards against them. They do not have a lot of sacks this year, not nearly as many quarterback sacks as they had last year, and that's simply because they're missing Brendan Highland, the senior end out of Lane County, because of an ACL tear in a non-contact drill at the start of the year. Brian had 19 last year all by himself, and the team total this year doesn't even have anywhere near that close. And yet they're still doing a very nice job of shutting down the run, and they're doing a very nice job of protecting against the pass. I think the Lewis and Clark game, 2 interceptions, they ended up with 3 for the afternoon, or 4 for the afternoon, but 2 of those were run back for touchdowns, one from 24 yards out and the other one for 99 yards. So the pass defense it's very, very strong for Linfield.
Let's take a look at Puget Sound, which is coming up on the 9th, and Pacific on the 16th, which would balance or end out regular season play. How do we look? How does Linfield stack up against those opponents coming up in the next 2 contests after this weekend?
Well, Dave, the final score for the Lewis and Clark game could be the same final score against Puget Sound. The Loggers on the year are 0-3 in conference play. They're dead last. They are 1-5 overall for the entire year, and they just basically don't have a good, solid football program. And that'll be a home game for Linfield. It'll be the final home game for the seniors, unless, of course, we do get a playoff game or several playoff games at home. That should be a very easy win for Linfield. Pacific, probably going to be a little bit tougher. Number one, they're a better team, and number two, we're playing them on the road. But it is amazing, and the Linfield coaches are extremely complimentary about how well the coaches have put together this program in only 3 years. And to think that right now Pacific has a record of 6-1, and this is the only third year that they've been playing football. So they're doing very, very well, and they're doing it the right way. I remember the first year we played Pacific, they had 123 freshmen, one junior, and one senior place kicker. Well, now all those freshmen are juniors. So they have a very experienced team. They're extremely well coached, and they just have a lot of money in that program. So they've been able to generate a very good football team in only 3 years' time. So that'll be an interesting game. Linfield would still be the favorite, but it'll be a very interesting football game. The Puget Sound game, it's going to be pretty one-sided.
So looking forward to another game. It's interesting to me, home field advantage usually is something that the teams like, but as you mentioned a couple times in this interview, it doesn't seem to really matter to the Linfield Wildcats. As I look at the scores here, in Abilene, Texas, the first game of the season, 71-21, a 50-point spread. Cleveland, Ohio was a shutout, 45-0. Spokane, 51-17. It doesn't seem to matter to Linfield whether on the road or at home.
You know, Dave, it just doesn't. And if you talk to the players, which we do every single week, they love playing at the Cat Dome. I think all teams like to play at home. Circumstances are very familiar. They know there's going to be a good crowd. They have a feeling for their home field. But for Linfield, especially this year, they just don't care where they play. They really don't. And if you look at the schedule, it is the opposite of a year ago when we had 5 regular season games at home and 4 on the road. This year, it's 4 games at home and 5 on the road. And 2 out of our final 3 are on the road. We play Willamette and Salem. We have our last regular season home game with Puget Sound. And then we have to travel up to Forest Grove and take on Pacific University. Doesn't really seem to make a whole lot of difference because our guys are so focused on execution, doing what they've been taught, playing hard, playing some very clean football, trying to eliminate as many penalties as possible. And the bottom line is they just don't seem to care where they play, Dave. They really don't. They prefer home. Any team would. But when they go out on the road, it's not like, oh, my gosh, we're out on the road, or we're going to play as well. That's really no concern for this Linfield football team this year.
What is it about the Linfield program that makes it such a juggernaut? It's you got a win record that is unparalleled almost in college football. And what is it that makes it such a dynasty?
Well, Dave, I would tell you, first of all, that is an excellent question. And there are many, many people that ask that question, and they say, how can Linfield continue to have such a good record every single year? It's now 58 consecutive years that Linfield football has had a winning season. There is nobody else close. I believe the closest school in any division is Florida State University, and if they have a winning record this year, it'll be 38 wins in a row, which means they're basically 20 years behind the Linfield Wildcats. But to answer your question, I would say, number one, it all starts with the administration, which is 105% behind this program. They realize how important it is, not just for football, but when you have a very, very good football team, it brings great notoriety to the school. And I think I can give you a really quick answer here, Dave, on that particular part of it. When people mention about USC, normally the first thing people say is, wow, they really have a good football team this year. They won't mention what a tremendous school of law they have there, or they won't mention that they have a tremendous school of cinematography in that area of Southern California. They'll say, well, their football team, wow, they're really good. Well, at Linfield, that's the first thing that most people think of. They think about football. So it has brought great recognition to the school and student athletes who are getting out of high school who may not have the talent and or say the size or the speed to play in the Pac-10 or the Southeastern Conference. They say, well, okay, where am I going to go play college football? And they take a look at Linfield. The other thing I think that really counts for Linfield is it's really more than a football program, Dave. It's a program where, sure, the student athletes play football and they learn a lot about the game. But Joseph Smith spends a tremendous amount of time with the other coaches working on life skills and how to grow up and be a productive young man. In fact, just this last week, I asked Joseph on the pregame show, I said, Coach, what is it that gives you your greatest satisfaction about being the leader of one of the most winningest football programs in the entire country? He said, Bill, the thing that really means the most to me is seeing our young men, after they graduate, come back to school and they say, hey, Coach, this is what I'm doing. Oh, by the way, I'm married and our first child is on the way. And I find that they are a strong, productive leader in their community. And then he threw in a bit of a disclaimer, Dave. He said, believe me, I'm not going to say I don't care about winning. I want to win as much as the next guy. I'm a highly competitive person. But he said the bottom line really to me is we love the wins. We want a national championship. But he said to me the greatest satisfaction is seeing the quality of the young men, both as a student, as an athlete, and later on as a husband and a father and a productive member of society. That's what really gets me going when I see the people that we graduate here at Linfield.
All righty. Hey, on that note, we are looking forward to the Willamette-Salem game. It's going to be in Salem, Oregon. The Linfield Wildcats taking on Willamette. And the pregame, I understand, is going to be at 1 o'clock, of course, Pacific time.
Correct, Dave.
And then the kickoff at 1:30.
That's exactly right.
Now, as I look at your the schedule here, is this going to be streamed with video on the internet? There's a little camera on your schedule.
We think so. It is totally up to Willamette University and as to how they want to handle the game, Dave. And the reason I say that is because it is a home game for them. I could give you a definite answer if it were at the Cat Dome, but at Willamette, we really don't know what they'll be able to get done down there.
Okay.
But our game will be on, of course, 12:60 a.m. KLYC. That's where we invite people to join us for the afternoon. Actually, quite frankly, we'd love to have a lot of people come on down with their purple and cardinal for Linfield and be a part of the audience for the game. Because the one school that does really, I can honestly say this, and I'm not being negative about Linfield fans, but the one school that does the greatest job in our conference of following its team is always Pacific Lutheran University. Every single year. They do the best job. They're the mothers, the fathers, the grandfathers, the grandmothers, the cousins, nephews, brothers, sisters. They all get the player number or whoever's playing out of their family, and then they have the name written right on the back of it. And they always sit together, and they always fill, and people will remember at our game for homecoming, that they all sat together in the bleachers across the field. And then after the game, Pacific Lutheran University does puts on a very unique event. It's called the Afterglow. And their head coach, Scott Westering, and the coaches and some of the leaders on the football team actually get up and speak to the group and let everybody know this is the way the game went today. We're excited we won. We're disappointed we lost. We're going to be back next week. But here are the really important qualities of being a student athlete at Pacific Lutheran University. And it doesn't make any difference whether they're at home, Dave, or whether they're on the road. They do it every single place they go. They have a fantastic fan base at Pacific Lutheran University, and I hope we have a great fan base Salem afternoon as we go down I-5 and play that game. We're looking forward to see a lot of Linfield people down there and hopefully get the Cats on to another win.
And, of course, we will have that this afternoon, Saturday afternoon, 1 o'clock for the pregame, 1:30 for the kickoff here on KLYC AM 1260 as we continue to follow the Linfield Wildcats in football this year and hopefully in years to come.
Well, and we thank you for your partnership, Dave. We really do. We enjoy being on the local radio station right there in McMinnville, and we just continue as you and Norma get started. And I know you've had some great challenges with the radio station, but we wish you the very, very best because Yamhill County does deserve its own radio station. So every single day we wish you the best, Dave.
Well, thank you very much, and go Wildcats. And looking forward to another win in another three games in the win column, which I guess we don't want to get too cocky, but it will probably happen. But you take one game at a time.